Desert onion.
Is Alex going to have a presentation? I mean, Alex, Alan. Yeah, do you? Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, no. How do I get this light to work? Oh, that's a problem. Is everyone ready? All right. I'd like to call the Monday, August 6, 2018 Oakwood City Council meeting to order. Would you please rise and join me with the pledge of the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call, please, Lori?
Mayor Duncan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Byington.
Here.
Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mrs. Hilton. Here. Mr. Epley.
And may I have a report on our minutes of our July 16 regular session, work session, and executive session? Mrs. Hilton.
Yes, Your Honor. I've reviewed the minutes from all three of those meetings, and I found them to be correct and complete. And therefore, I move that they be adopted as written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So ordered. Under status reports, we lost a fine community servant last month, Harry Ebling, who's I think affectionately known as Mr. Oakwood, and we have Judy Cook, our former mayor, and Lee Turbin, who is the president of the Oakwood Historical Society, who would like to make some comments about the great life of Harry Ebling. Welcome, Judy, back.
Thank you. Yes, we're both here tonight to pay tribute to Harry for the many contributions that he made to our community. Harry was born in Oakwood and spent his childhood growing up here, graduating from Oakwood High School. And after college at Ohio Wesleyan and a stint in the Air Force and law school, he came back to Oakwood to practice law and raise his family. Oakwood was home, and it really was part of his identity. Harry's passion was history, particularly local history. His interest went beyond casual exploring and into in-depth research. In his written reports, he literally started from the ground up, beginning by discussing the soil of the region and what it meant as far as our development and the impact on it. Fortunately, Harry was dedicated to recording his research. The result is an expansive history of our city and beyond, and preserved and available now and into the future. What makes this history even more special is the fact that Harry not only researched and recorded land development, buildings, and events, he included people. This gives our history the interesting quality of storytelling. Harry believed in the value of this pursuit, even to the point of organizing a formal system of recorded interviews with a variety of Oakwood citizens. Of course, as Harry proceeded with his work, he gathered the attention of citizens with like interests. It is not surprising that the issue of preservation soon came forth as a cause and concern. Awareness and knowledge of significant historical buildings and places encourages efforts to preserve them. Most people believe in preservation, at least until it stands in the way of another choice. Over time, the testing of that situation resulted in balanced respect for and encouragement of preservation, expressed in mutually agreed policies and guidelines. A significant example of this is the policy statement adopted by City Council in 2001. Harry Ebling's leadership in developing a greater awareness of our history and historical treasures set the stage for assuring support for preservation activity. This has made our city a better and more complete community. Along with collecting historical data, Harry was committed to organizing it into usable format and safely storing it for future use. When City Hall was renovated, a golden opportunity presented itself, and Harry jumped at the opportunity. A well-lighted, spacious area of our renovated City Hall lower level was set aside as a work area and storage site for the documents. It became Harry's second home. He established a filing and storage system and work layout that functions to this day. Harry found great comfort in knowing that the records of Oakwood's history now reside in the city building where they are safe and available. Harry Ebling was not a man who sought the limelight. Instead, his contributions came from a deep sense of their value and commitment to accomplishing his goals. Fortunately, his sincerity and leadership served as an inspiration and catalyst for others to follow. He richly deserves the title Mr. Oakwood, as he came to be known. He leaves a legacy which I am grateful as a citizen, and which I know that the City Council and community will continue to support. He will be very missed. Now I'd like to ask Lee Turbin to come forward as president of the Historical Society and talk more specifically about some of Harry's accomplishments.
Thank you, Judy, and welcome, Lee.
Wow, thank you. It really is my privilege to talk to you today about how the Oakwood Historical Society developed, evolved, and flourished under the watchful eye of Harry Ebling. As one of the founders and president emeritus of the Society, it was a big part of Harry, as he was of ours. Harry was truly one of the architects that defined who and what the Society was and is today. Harry had the foresight to create a strong foundation. He applied for and attained our designation as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. But Harry firmly believed that the key to our success was education, and consequently, he wrote several books about the history of Oakwood, one of them being the Oakwood Scrapbook. He also impressed on us the importance of communication, and he wrote countless articles, not only for the Society and our newsletter, but for the Oakwood Register. In Harry's honor, we are going to actually republish a collection of articles that Harry wrote for the centennial. Now, they were originally published through the Oakwood Register over a period of many weeks, and we're going to consolidate them into a single booklet, I think, which will be really nice. Harry also established and maintained the only archive of history and artifacts specifically for Oakwood, and that's really important. And we are working on that. We are currently in the process of creating an electronic index for better identification and retrieval of items. It's going to make it a lot more user-friendly for sure. Under Harry's leadership, we attained national recognition by securing a coveted spot for Shantz Park on the National Register of Historic Districts. As well, when the Long Romsport property was bequeathed to the Society in 1985, he again supported our application for the National Register. Today, the Long Romspert Homestead and House Museum is one of 3 individually listed properties in Oakwood on the National Register of Historic Places, and really, it's a gift for the entire community to enjoy. Harry always encouraged the Society to partner with other Oakwood organizations. Today, we're working with the city on a preservation project, which we're pretty excited about. With the city's help, we're going to create a digital archive, and it's going to list every property in Oakwood and really become a repository for all the historical data that we've gathered, including pictures. And so it's definitely going to facilitate those individual inquiries when people call up and say, "Can you tell me anything about my house?" As well, it's going to help us with future preservation initiatives. The Society has also been a longtime advocate of the library, for whom we have wrote and submitted the application so that they too could be recognized on the National Register of Historic Places. We also partner with the library for the Far Hill Speaker Series, and I am very pleased to tell you that we have become so successful we need to find a newer, larger venue to accommodate our growing audiences, which is a good thing. With Harry's guidance, we developed and organized many events and programs to introduce the community to the history of Oakwood. We developed and offer walking tours of our historic districts as a way to get people involved and really raise their awareness as to the importance of preservation. Harry encouraged us to offer and develop classes to bring our history to life. Over the years, we've conducted countless tours for the school children of the Long Romspert Homestead. And so we bring the children in and we show them what life would have been like, if they were to have lived in the early days of Oakwood. We've offered garden programs for adults and children. And most recently, we introduced a new series of programs called Homemade at the Historical Society. And so far this year, we have taught people how to bake bread, churn butter, make homemade pasta, and yesterday we churned ice cream, and it was a great day for ice cream. So these are just a few of the ways that Harry helped to develop and really nurture the Historical Society. His legacy will continue to grow on as we pursue new projects like the digital archive and new events like the holiday home tour this winter, which is new, and so I want you all to be there. There is no doubt that Harry loved Oakwood and Oakwood loved Harry. And I want to leave you with a very short and personal story about Harry. When Harry was over at Lincoln Park, I used to go and visit him periodically and check up on him and tell him what we were working on. And, Harry in his later years didn't talk a whole lot. But when he did speak, he had something to say. Well, on this particular day, I was doing most of the talking as usual, and when I thought Harry had had enough, I closed my folio and prepared to leave. And as I was walking towards the door, I heard Harry say, "Lee," and I turned around and he said, "I like the direction the society is going." And for me, that was like, my teacher just gave me an A. So rest in peace, Harry. We've got this one covered.
Very good. Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Judy. I know that one of the traditions that Judy started as mayor was under Ohio Revised Code, mayors are allowed to perform wedding ceremonies, and she would charge a modest fee and then turn those proceeds over to the Historical Society to help you with your finances. I have kept that tradition alive, except I doubled the fee. So, but we're continuing to do that, and I'm sure you appreciate that, doubling of the fee. If someone wants to get involved with the Oakwood Historical Society, how would they do that? Could you come up and say that? Could you say it at the mic so people at home can hear you? I'm sorry.
Yes, if there is anyone who does want to get involved with the Historical Society, we would love new volunteers. We do have a great website, and on the website you've got information about the society and a phone number, so give us a call and we for sure will give you a call back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have any comments? All right. He was a retired lawyer with the firm of Pickrell, Schaefer, and Ebling, firm in downtown Dayton. It's been in existence for over 100 years. And Mr. Alan Schaefer is also here, and we acknowledge your presence here and appreciate all your work on behalf of the City of Oakwood as well. And thank you again, Judy and Lee. Do you have my proclamation, my next proclamation? Okay. At this time, I have a proclamation that I would like to read to the public. Whereas Calvin Maine and Vera Jane Pacey were married in 1941, and Norman Maine was born in 1944, and he is here in the audience. And whereas on August 12, 1948, Calvin Maine and Frank Cicada opened the doors to Dorothy Lane Market, a fruit stand at the corner of Far Hills Avenue and Dorothy Lane. And Vera's youngest daughter, Mary Pacey Hebe, rang up the first order. And whereas in 1953, the store relocates to its current location at 2710 Far Hills Avenue in Oakwood. Whereas in 1972, Calvin Maine passed away and Vera Maine assumed the role as president until her death in 2011 at the age of 105. And whereas Dorothy Lane Market is known internationally for its customer service culture, gourmet foods, the Food and Wine Show, the Spring Fling Pastry Show, the Cheese Show, as well as unique products such as Heavenly Ham and, of course, the Killer Brownie. And whereas Dorothy Lane Market employs about 230 associates in Oakwood, in its Oakwood location, 15% of whom are area youth. And whereas in 2013, Norman Maine received the Food Marketing Institute Robert B. Wegman Award for Entrepreneurial Excellence. And whereas Dorothy Lane Market received the Aaron Ritchie Memorial 2017 Business Award, which recognizes efforts to enrich the lives of those with developmental disabilities. Now therefore, under the power vested in me, I, William D. Duncan, Mayor of the City of Oakwood, congratulate Dorothy Lane Market on its 70th anniversary and do hereby proclaim Saturday, August 11, 2018, as Dorothy Lane Market Day in the City of Oakwood. And here tonight we have Jerry Post, the longtime store director at the Oakwood store, along with Norman Maine, and I'm sorry, sir, I forgot your name. And Alex, nice to meet you. And I'm going to come down and present this to Jerry, and he has a few words to maybe talk a little bit about the event on Saturday.
This is actually quite an honor for us. As a member of the staff at Dorothy Lane Market, I've had 26 years of working with great family and great friends. We're in awe that we've been able to stay in business this long. And thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, and thank you to everyone in Oakwood. I mean, this is a community that's perfectly served us, and what we've done. If it wasn't for the community we're in, I think it's very likely that Dorothy Lane wouldn't be in business today. So but as far as Saturday, we're just going to have some fun. We're going to have a little carnival. We're going to try and entertain the kids, the families, push our food, do a little face painting, hot dogs, root beer floats, a little bit of old school fun throughout the store. So it should be a good time. We've been celebrating all year. Every 7th of the month, we've been doing something special. And August 12th was our original opening. So on the 11th, it works out best, and we're going to have a great time that day, and it should be a blast. So hopefully we'll see everyone there, but we'll see you often enough as well. So thank you for keeping us in business. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You're clearly a community gem. Norman, would you like to address us?
I can't thank you enough for this award. My first memories of our existing store, I was 8 years old. My dad had been, we talked at supper when he got home at 9 o'clock at night. He said, there's this family in Oakwood, their name is Talbot. They want to build us a grocery store in Oakwood. It was a wow, because we had known, until I was 8 years old, my mother operated a fruit stand on the public market in downtown Dayton. My dad had a fruit stand at the corner of Far Hills and Dorothy Lane. Somebody wanted to build us a real building and give us an opportunity. There's a photo of me with my dad. I was 8 years old, and we're standing in the construction. You can see the steel work and so on. And I treasure that photo today more than anything. I also treasure the memories of being able to be in business in the city of Oakwood. This community has provided us not only with the best police department, the best fire department, the best city services of any place that you can find. It's provided us with wonderful kids who come from solid families, who come and make their way at Dorothy Lane. They come when they're 16, many of them stay till they're 22 years old. They really make a difference. A lot of people say nice things about the way they're treated. The fact is, it's very easy to treat people nice when you're located in the city of Oakwood. It truly is a treasure. I really know what I'm talking about. I'm close friends with lots of grocers, Roche Brothers in Boston, Lunds and Barley's in Minnesota, Heinen's in Cleveland, and Bristol Farms in Los Angeles, and Metropolitan Market in Seattle. And they're all high touch, high service. Bristol Farms is in the old Chasen's restaurant in Beverly Hills. We're in share groups with them. We meet twice a year. And there's not one of them is in a community that compares to Oakwood, Ohio. I always say that luck is much better than brains. I'm the luckiest guy around. I got to do business in Oakwood and be parcel of this community for most of my life. So I can't thank you enough. I can't thank the citizens enough. I can't thank all those kids that work there. I can't think of all those boys and girls that met each other there and became married. Many, many families. You're the greatest. I wish Harry Ebeling was here, because no doubt he could help me with names. He had a magnificent city manager in 1953, a magnificent mayor and a council that pulled for us. We're there on opening day. I have photos of them.
Oh, wow.
And those, when traffic got tough, the black and white police cars from the city of Oakwood, black with white lettering on them, came and helped us out, as you always have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kid, we'll let the kid say something.
Yeah, let's, Alex, please come.
16, we hope make a career with us. Go ahead, say something.
Yeah.
I didn't actually have anything prepared. I am one of those kids that grew up right on the border to Oakwood and Kettering, and I've worked at the store since I was 16. I walked in the room 10 minutes early and like, oh, happy birthday. I turned 16 the night before, so I was ready to have a job. And I've been with the company ever since. Funny enough, all my siblings, I think collectively we have over 40 years of service to the company.
Wow.
Between my mom, who grew up in town, and my 4 other siblings, we put in probably, I think, 40 years, and an uncle with 51. So it's a great company to be around.
All right. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you. My next proclamation is regarding Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas this year approximately 165,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in the United States alone, 1 man every 3.2 minutes, and roughly 29,000 will die this year from the disease, 1 man every 18 minutes. Whereas in Ohio, an estimated 5,800 new cases of prostate cancer and an estimated 1,100 deaths will occur in 2018. Whereas men with relatives, father, brother, son, with a history of prostate cancer are twice as likely to develop the disease. Whereas prostate cancer is the most commonly diagnosed form of cancer in American men and the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths. And whereas 1 in 9 American men are diagnosed with prostate cancer, for African American men, 1 in 6 will develop prostate cancer during their lifetime. Whereas veterans who were exposed to herbicides like Agent Orange are at an increased risk for developing an aggressive form of prostate cancer, and whereas education regarding prostate cancer and early detection strategies is critical to saving lives and preserving and protecting families. Whereas if caught early, prostate cancer has a 5-year survival rate of nearly 100%. However, for late-stage prostate cancer, the 5-year survival rate is only 29%. And whereas all men are at risk for prostate cancer, we encourage the citizens of Oakwood to recognize the importance of prostate screenings. Therefore, under the power vested in me, I, William D. Duncan, Mayor of the City of Oakwood, hereby proclaim September 2018 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in the city. And my next proclamation is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And whereas September is known around the United States as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and is intended to help promote awareness surrounding each of the suicide prevention resources available to us and our community. The simple goal is to learn how to help those around us and how to talk about suicide without increasing the risk of harm. Whereas suicidal thoughts can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background, and whereas, according to the Centers for Disease Control, each year more than 41,000 people die by suicide. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among adults in the U.S. and the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 24. And whereas the City of Oakwood is no different than any other community in the country, but chooses to publicly state and place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, PAC leaders, police officers, and parents as partners in supporting our community and simply being available to one another. Whereas local organizations like the Suicide Prevention Center and national organizations like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the National Alliance for Mental Illness are on the front lines of a battle that many still refuse to discuss in public, as suicide and mental illness remain too taboo a topic to speak on. Whereas every member of our community should understand that through life's struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all silently fighting our own battles. Whereas residents are encouraged to take the time to inquire as to the well-being of their family, friends, and neighbors over the next few days and weeks, and to genuinely convey their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, message, handshake, or hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. And whereas the 5th annual Out of the Darkness Dayton Walk, in connection with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, will take place at 2 p.m. on Saturday, October 21 at the Oakwood High School. The 2017 event had over 1,100 walkers and raised about $69,000. Therefore, under the power vested in me, I, William D. Duncan, Mayor of the City of Oakwood, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2018 as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in Oakwood. And here tonight to talk about the walk is Sally Wilson, a physician, Dr. Sally Wilson, who also serves on our volunteer board of health in the City of Oakwood. Sally, would you like to come down and address council? Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Duncan, and thank you, City Council, so much for the proclamation. And also, I wanted to thank you for your support of the walk over the years, as well as the Oakwood City Schools and the support they've lent us. And I'd also like to thank Dorothy Lane Market, who has supported us. So thank you all for being supporters of our walk as well. The American Foundation of Suicide Prevention is the largest private funder of suicide prevention research in the country. They've been in existence for 30 years, and this walk that we're having is one of over 400 walks across the country this year. So, like Mayor Duncan mentioned, last year we raised over $69,000 and had over 1,100 people show up. So it has grown exponentially in the few years we've had it, and it just speaks to the need to have a place where people can come that feel safe, who've either experienced mental illness or they've experienced a suicide loss. It also is an important place just to bring awareness and show support for people. It is free to walk. I want to highlight that because that's one of the beauties of this walk is it costs nothing for people to come and walk. We do encourage fundraising, but it is not necessary in order to participate. We always are looking for sponsors. If people are interested in being a sponsor, I can give you more information on that, and also for volunteers as well. And as a volunteer for this organization, I'm available to come present programs to different organizations, and I've done that for Rotaries and churches. So I'd be happy to present. I have a 30 to 45-minute PowerPoint presentation that's geared to the general public that I'd be happy to present, as well as some other programs I've presented in the Oakwood City Schools as well. So I have brought flyers for the walk and also my card. So I have several cards, so if anyone is interested in contacting me about either volunteering, sponsoring, or having me come do some programs, I'd be happy to do that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We appreciate your efforts on behalf of this very important topic that needs more publicity so people become aware of how significant it is to help get involved with this. Did anyone have any other questions for Dr. Wilson? All right. Now, as our former mayor is here, she will attest that this is probably the most status reports we've ever had in an Oakwood City Council meeting. So to Mr. Barnett and Mr. Russell, we apologize, but you're next. Last month, many Oakwood residents received 2 direct mail pieces from a group called Ohio Realtors, which contained false and misleading information regarding our pre-sale inspection program for residential properties. Our pre-sale inspection program was established in 1968 and is especially important in a community like Oakwood, which despite its aging stock of homes, many of which are 75 to 100 years old, continues to be the premier residential community in the Miami Valley. Our property maintenance regulations are intended to provide public health, safety, and welfare. By ensuring the properties meet certain minimums each time they are transferred, the pre-sale inspection program helps to prevent homes from catching fire, collapsing, or becoming unsightly or unsafe. City Council and city staff appreciate the numerous comments we have received from local realtors and citizens expressing support of this unique program to ensure that Oakwood homes continue to rise in value. For the last 2.5 years, between 75 and 80% of all homes sold in Oakwood sold above the Montgomery County auditor's appraised value, and that's a testament to another great reason why Oakwood is in fact the premier residential community. It doesn't help to have Dorothy Lane Market within walking distance, so thank you for that. So tonight, I think, we have to do visitors. This is the visitors part of our meeting, where anyone who wishes to address council for any issue other than the public hearing we're about to have on the sugar camp development, this would be your time to come down and address council. We're going to have a public hearing after we hear from the developer and staff, and so anybody who wants to address council at that point, hold your comments for that. So if anybody wants to address us on any other issues, this would be your chance to come down and address council, and we would welcome you. Seeing none, we will close the visitors portion of our visitors portion of our meeting, and we will go into the legislation. And this one requires my glasses. I have a resolution to grant approval of an amendment to the approved master plan for the Sugar Camp and Point Oakwood development. affecting the southwest portion of the said development. This is a resolution to approve a revised plan for the Russell Wealth Management Corporate Headquarters Building, which has been proposed for the 4.3 acre parcel between Sugar Camp and the Point Oakwood residential neighborhood. Last November, Council approved a master plan amendment that changed the use of this parcel from residential to commercial, and also approved a site plan for the Russell Wealth Management headquarters to be built on it. By operation of law, the site plan approval lapsed in May of this year because construction had not commenced within 6 months of the approval. Russell Wealth Management is here before us again to seek approval for a revised site plan for its office building. Although I am introducing this resolution to approve, Council is required to hold a public hearing on the proposal. At the conclusion of the hearing, we may vote to approve the application, approve it with conditions, or deny it. If Council decides to approve it, we will adopt this resolution as is. If we decide to approve it with conditions, there is space provided on the document to write them in tonight. In the event we deny the application, I will withdraw this resolution altogether and ask the law director to prepare legislation consistent with Council's decision to deny it. So as a formality, before we present the public hearing, I would move that Council adopt this resolution and ask for a second.
Your Honor, I have to recuse myself from this, so I will, because I live across the street and under advisement of the city attorney, I will step down from the dais.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Byington. I'm still looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Hilton. So to begin our public hearing, we will hear from Ethan Kroger, who's going to present a staff report, and then I believe the applicant is going to have a report, and then we will open up a public hearing to hear from anyone who has any comments, either in favor or against this proposal. So welcome, Ethan. Okay.
As you may recall, last year City Council members gave special use approval for a 3-story, 22,000 square foot office building to serve as the headquarters for Russell Wealth Management. Due to the lack of building activity, that special use approval has lapsed, which is why we are here today. The applicant is Synergy Building Systems on behalf of Russell Wealth Management. The nature of the request is to amend the site plan to construct a 16,600 square foot, 2-story office building on the 4.3 acre parcel located east of Sugar Camp Circle, west of Point Oakwood, and north of West Shantz Avenue. Now, for those of you who are new to the meeting tonight or watching at home, the application review process on July 11th, 2018, Planning Commission members held a public hearing to make recommendations to City Council to approve the request to construct a 16,600 square foot, 2-story office building on that 4.3 acre parcel. Here tonight with City Council, we will also hold a public hearing, and by a majority vote, approve, deny, or approve with conditions the request for an amended site plan for Russell Wealth Management. If I can direct your attention to the screen here, or the screen in front of you, the yellow highlighted portion is that 4.3 acre parcel, which would serve as the headquarters for Russell Wealth Management. And just to orientate ourselves here a little bit, to the north we have Old River Park. To the east we have the Point Oakwood residential neighborhoods. Directly to the south we have the Hatcher Platte and Dayton Country Club. And just to the west, we have the rest of Sugar Camp campus. In November of 2017, upon the Planning Commission's recommendations for approval, Council held a public hearing and approved a special use request to construct a 3-story, 22,000 square foot office building to serve as the headquarters for Russell Wealth Management. Some of the key points to take away from that November 2017 approval meeting were the recommendations that Planning Commission made to City Council. A 3-story, 22,000 square foot office building, as well as a walkout basement, 30 parking spaces to be positioned along West Shantz Avenue, a setback of 87.5 feet from the Point Oakwood neighborhood, a setback of 131 feet from the public right-of-way at West Shantz Avenue, and Russell Wealth Management logos were to appear on both the west and the east side of the building, with only the west logo to be backlit in accordance with Oakwood lighting standards. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I can draw your attention here to the right of the screen, in the highlighted portion with my mouse or cursor there is that original 22,000 square foot office building being positioned on that 4.3 acre parcel. If I could also direct your attention to the 30 parking spaces that will be positioned here along West Shantz. Also to take note is this hammerhead or T section, which would be used for emergency personnel if the need were to arise. Now that we kind of went over what had happened in the past year, I'd like to kind of switch gears here, and I'd like to talk to you a little about what's changing. What are the major differences between the proposal you heard last year and the proposal before you today? First and foremost is the location of the building. The applicant proposes a slightly different location for the building within the site. While the building has been substantially scaled down in size, it will be positioned closer to West Shantz Avenue and will have a setback of 121.6 feet, and the setback from the Point Oakwood neighborhood would be 117.1 feet. So just to recap here, on the top of your screen would be the 2017 proposal, and directly below is the proposal in front of you tonight. The newly proposed Russell Wealth Management building will move 30 feet further away from the Point Oakwood neighborhood and will move 15.5 feet closer to West Shantz Avenue. The parking lot, which was located 41 feet from West Shantz Avenue, will now be 97 feet away from the public right-of-way on West Shantz. I know there's a lot to look at here, but what I want to direct your attention to is just the footprint of that two-story, 16,600 square foot office building, and the setbacks from the Point Oakwood neighborhood, which is 117.1 feet here. And then directly to the south, we have a setback of 121.6 feet away from the right-of-way on West Shantz Avenue. The parking lot will no longer be positioned along West Shantz Avenue. It will move north in front of the proposed two-story building, and the number of parking spaces has increased from 30 to 33. Again, if you note in that original site plan, the 30 parking spaces were positioned here along West Shantz Avenue and now have moved north in front of the building, and the number of parking spaces has increased from 30 to 33. The originally approved three-story, 22,000 square foot office building with a walkout basement has been scaled down to a two-story, 16,600 square foot building with no walkout basement and minimal excavation into the hillside. Primary ingress and egress to the site will be from Sugar Camp Circle, entering from the existing signalized West Shantz Avenue and Kramer Road intersection. A proposed secondary access to the building will be from the existing curb cut off of West Shantz Avenue, although the developer has proposed that be limited to a right-in and right-out only traffic movement. So here at the bottom of your screen is West Shantz Avenue, and the proposed right-in only and right-out only. Here we see the primary egress coming off of West Shantz Avenue and Kramer, right where Sugar Camp Circle is here, to the secondary entrance here at the top of your screen. The applicant is also proposing to add a monument sign located at the primary ingress and egress off of Sugar Camp Circle. Here we can see the address, 1 Russell Place, with Russell Total Wealth Management. Now the sign is 6 feet in width and 4 feet and 8 inches in height. And if you can note that red circle on your screen, that is the approximate proposed location for that monument sign located inside of the Sugar Camp campus, just off of Sugar Camp Circle. To kind of give you an idea here, this is an existing monument sign right off of West Shantz Avenue. And the size of this sign, if memory serves, is 8 feet in width and 6 feet in height. So the Russell Wealth Management sign will be significantly smaller than what you're seeing here. These are two artist renderings showing you the west elevation and the east elevation of the building. It's important to note that the signage on the building on the west elevation will be backlit in accordance with Oakwood lighting standards, and the east elevation will not be. Again, another artist rendering of what the building will look like. Again, we can see the parking lot has moved to the north in front of the building. And although the proposed building does not mirror the nearly 48-year-old architecture of the existing sugar camp buildings, the designers are using complementary building materials to link the existing building themes and surrounding structures. Again, this is just an artist rendering. If you were to be in the Point Oakwood neighborhoods looking up, it's important to remember that this is just an artist rendering with no landscape plan just yet, so there will be some vegetation and screening, but just to give you an idea. And now we get to the landscape plan. As I just mentioned, that view, if you were standing somewhere in this area, you can see now that there is heavy planting and vegetation being proposed along the east side here to screen those neighbors. And I know it's kind of difficult to see on your screens, but where the pink and white highlighted area is here, that is all the existing vegetation to remain along West Shantz Avenue on both the right and the left-hand side, as well as additional plantings that are all in color. So along the secondary access point here where the right in, right out only is, we have 2 planting beds along either side, plantings along the parking lot, and planting beds along the primary ingress and egress to the site. The mature trees to the northeast will also remain. The Oakwood Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 11, 2018, and by a vote of 3-0, with 1 member absent and another recused, made a recommendation to City Council to approve the request, with the condition that the proposed monument sign be moved from the right-in, right-out only roadway access point at West Shantz Avenue to the intersection of Sugar Camp Circle and 1 Russell Place in the interior of Sugar Camp, which is what they have done. Staff recommendations. Staff recommends approval subject to the following conditions: a final landscape plan be approved by the city horticulturalist, the monument sign and building signs to gain final approval from the city staff, and architectural details and materials must complement the existing buildings located within Sugar Camp. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the staff presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, I would like to turn it over to Jared with Synergy, and he has a presentation for you as well, I believe.
Any questions for Ethan?
Yeah, I have 2 quick ones. I believe your last slide answered them, but I might as well clarify. First, on the parking lot, you want to go back to the picture. I know it says they're going to be, it's hard to see on our screen. I saw it up here. They are going to be, you can enter a parking space from either angle, right?
That's
It's not going to be angled one way as you come in off Shantz and then the other way.
I believe.
It's a 2-lane.
Correct.
Good, thank you. And the other thing is on the Shantz view where the existing trees are and then the new bed right there, will all of that be grass where it's not trees, obviously? You know, or is it some of it going to be the natural, I'll call it gravel, but it's not gravel. Is it all going to be newly grassed from pretty much the building all the way to the street?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, thank you.
And can you go to the last slide, next to the last slide? So these staff recommendations, subject to following conditions, are those incorporated in the ordinance that we have here in front of us, or do we need to add those if we approve this?
They're not worked into the resolution. If you want to add those conditions, those would be ones that we would write in tonight.
Okay, but it's my understanding that the applicant has agreed to these recommendations.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for Ethan? Thank you very much. I believe that's your first presentation to the council, and you did an excellent job, so congratulations. So for we'll now hear from the applicant, and do you have a PowerPoint as well? Okay, so you can either speak from this podium, and if you'd like to, thank you guys for coming, and if you'd like to state your name and address for the record, we welcome you.
Certainly, thank you. Jared Barnett with Synergy Building Systems. We saw Ethan's presentation and didn't want to reinvent the wheel. He did such a nice job with it. I think, as you heard at Planning Commission, there was one item there that we've addressed in the plans you see already here. We really started with somewhat of a fresh look at this building for our client, Russell Wealth. And in doing so, as we found opportunities to really kind of right-size this building for their current needs, we looked at opportunities also to do what we thought would be in the surrounding community's best interest. So, as Mr. Kroger pointed out, we were able to pull the building at a minimum of 30 feet further, probably on average about 40 feet further from Point Oakwood. We were able to pull parking away from Shantz Avenue. One of the ways we did that was by keeping that existing cut on Shantz Avenue. That was one of the items from Planning Commission. They felt the sign there really kind of separated Russell from the Sugar Camp development, so we moved the sign to be within the site. And then finally, the overall signage on the building was a question that came up at Planning Commission, so we did reduce that to what was originally just the architects, but now has been specified for the building. Outside of that, the presentation really covered the majority of it. Obviously, you've approved this once, and this is a little smaller scale. I think probably the most notable positive change is from Point Oakwood. As you're looking up the hill, not only is the building 30, 40, probably 50 feet at the farthest point away, but it's now what was originally a 4-story structure to a 2-story structure. So I think the massing and scale of this fits better on the site. Not that there was obviously any issue with what was previously approved. I think we had an opportunity to make it even a little bit better for the surrounding residents.
Okay.
So we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Barnett? If we approve this evening, do you have some sort of a timeline for when construction will begin, or
Yesterday.
more importantly, when would it be done?
Yesterday, yeah, actually, we've moved forward on plans already, so hope to be submitting permit shortly after this. But our goal is to break ground in September. We won't have that 6-month expiration issue.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Summer of next year, so a little less than a year.
And do you have anyone else that wishes to address council on
Only
your
if you
behalf?
ask me really hard questions.
Okay. All right. We'll see what we can do. All right.
Thank you
very much for your presentation. So at this point, I will we will go into a public hearing, and this is a point where any citizen who is either in favor or opposed or in favor with conditions can address City Council and give us your input prior to City Council rendering its decision. Do we need to swear people in that choose to, did I sort of screw that up or not?
If we're going to take testimony, we should swear. We can do a group swear.
Okay.
It'd be the
So
easiest
if there's
way.
anyone here that wishes to give testimony, this would be time if you could stand up, and our law director would ask you to swear an oath saying that what you're going to say is true and correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Just one? Is there anybody else that plans to testify? All right, if you just raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in any testimony before the council tonight? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, since it appears that you're the only one, it's your turn. Welcome. If you could identify yourself, name and address for the record, and we welcome you.
My name is Barb Cerny. I live at 201 Maysfield. If you remember, I was vehemently against this proposal back in November of last year. If you were to drive out their proposed right, left, or their right lane only, in and out, and you drove straight across, you would end up in my house.
Okay.
So literally what I want to say is thank you for redoing this plan. We had gotten over 100 signatures from people in Hampshire Platte because of the architectural issues that we saw in the original 4-story building. It just didn't seem to fit on the plot. It didn't seem to fit the architectural integrity of either Sugar Camp or Oakwood. So I came tonight out of just sheer curiosity, and I'm perfectly happy with the new plan. I thank you very much for going back to the drawing board. Hopefully you took some of our comments into consideration when they did that, and therefore I think it will be a nice addition now to Oakwood instead of monstrosity that it was the last time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. For the record, I will point out that we have a new developer here this evening, so from the previous developer. But the owner is still the same, and he is also here. So I guess since no one else has decided to give testimony, we will close the public hearing, and we will now open it up for deliberation by council. Does anyone wish to begin the deliberations? You have no comments or questions? Okay, okay, so we, then in that case, I was thinking I was going to be here till 2 in the morning again. I just didn't think.
I like the new plan. I mean,
like,
I was,
okay.
I was, you know, I was okay with the last plan after some changes were made, and I agree with our guest that just spoke. I actually like this better. I think I just,
Okay.
you know, improvement's been made, and this is a nice plan, and I like the movement of the parking lot. I think there's benefits to both buildings, but this is some good negotiations, if you will, have happened, or adjustments by the owner and the builder, and I think it looks good.
All right, well, hearing that, I have no additional comments, so it has been moved and seconded that we approve this. One clarification, I want to make sure that the 3 staff recommendations are going to be part of what we approve tonight.
All right, then you can offer that as an amendment to the resolution. We'll go ahead and write them in tonight.
Okay. All right.
Move and second it as amended, and then you can proceed to take a
So
vote.
I'm amending my own ordinance, or
Correct.
own introduction. So I would like to amend that, folks, for the 3 things that were in Ethan Kroger's report from the staff, that we make sure that that's part of our resolution. So is there a second to my amended ordinance? All right. And if that is accurate, then Lori will ask you to call the roll.
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
All right. Thank you very much. We look forward to you as new neighbors in Oakwood. So thank you for coming, and we welcome Vice Mayor Byington back to the dais. So our next, I've lost my agenda. Here it is. Yes. We have an ordinance to replace our variance standards, and Vice Mayor Byington will be introducing that.
Yes, Your Honor. This is an ordinance to repeal the existing section 1006.7, which is the variance standards of the Oakwood zoning ordinance, and adopt a new section 1006.7, variance standards of the Oakwood zoning ordinance. This is an ordinance to update the decisions, standards used by our Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals to evaluate zoning variances. It has been recommended by the City Law Director to align Oakwood's variance standards with the Ohio Supreme Court case, and I think we talked about that in depth at our last meeting. As required by law, amendments to the text of the zoning ordinance require 2 public hearings. The first was held before the Planning Commission on June 6, 2018, and resulted in a unanimous recommendation of approval by the Planning Commission. The second public hearing took place at our July 11, 2018 council meeting. And at this time, since this is the second reading, I would move the council adopt it this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments or questions for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
And Vice Mayor Byington also has an ordinance establishing procedures and standards for mobile food vehicles.
Yes, Your Honor. I hesitated because I saw a food truck and my stomach growled a little bit. So this is an ordinance to establish our procedures and standards for operation of mobile food vehicles. 2 ordinances were introduced at our June 6th meeting to update the city's business regulation code with respect to food trucks. The first was an ordinance that will allow mobile food vehicles or food trucks to operate on public right-of-ways in the city. After we introduced that ordinance, we heard from a number of residents concerned about food trucks on residential streets, particularly near the schools and public parks. The consistent theme we heard is that residents do not necessarily dislike food trucks, but are concerned that the ordinance would create an open system that allows licensed vendors to decide when, where, and how often they will open for business in the city of Oakwood. Council was receptive to these concerns, so at our July 11th meeting, I withdrew the original ordinance and introduced a new version. Tonight we are conducting a second reading on that new ordinance. It will still allow food truck operation in the city, but would utilize an event-based permit system instead of the open system in the prior ordinance. This ordinance includes a number of provisions to protect the residential character of our community. Highlights include the following. The permits are always required for food truck operation, whether on public or private property. Permits will only be issued in connection with a specific party, rally, or other event sponsored or hosted by an Oakwood property owner. Permits will be issued for a specific location during a specific time. Permits will be issued on a first-come, first-served basis. No more than 3 permits will be available for a particular event, although the city manager will have limited discretion to increase the number of available permits for larger events in locations that can accommodate more food trucks. The city will also retain the right to deny or impose conditions on permits as needed to minimize traffic and parking congestion, to promote public safety, to ensure that the access to public buildings and facilities is not impeded, or to ensure that there is no interference with the delivery of governmental or emergency services. It will also provide for all operators and facilities must be in full compliance with all state and county requirements for food or for mobile food service, and must have all necessary licenses, permits, certificates, and inspections. All operators and facilities must be in full compliance with all local ordinances, including the noise ordinance. Even with a permit, food trucks will be prohibited in alleys and on the following streets: Far Hills Avenue, Shroyer Road, Patterson Road, East and West Shantz Avenue between Oakwood Avenue and Oakwood Kettering Corporate Line, Oakwood Avenue between Far Hills and Irving Avenue, and Parkett Avenue between Far Hills and Harmon Avenues. Hours of operations are between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m., and unless being operated on a closed road, such as for a block party, food trucks must be parked by the curb, must dispense food curbside, and cannot impede the orderly flow of traffic. And again, as this is a second reading of this ordinance, I would move that council adopt it this evening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
And next, Vice Mayor Byington has an ordinance regarding street sales in business districts.
Yes, Your Honor. This is the second ordinance to update our business regulation code as it pertains to food trucks. It was introduced with a first reading at our June 6th council meeting. There's an existing ordinance in our code, section 725.01, that prohibits anyone from offering anything or product for sale within any street right-of-way. This ordinance will be amended in section 725.01 to create an exemption for food trucks, but will continue to prohibit other kinds of selling on public streets. And this is also a second reading of this ordinance, so I'd move that we adopt it this evening.
Do I have a second? Second. Any questions or comments for Vice Mayor Byington? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
And our last piece of legislation is by Mr. Stevens. It's a resolution regarding noxious weeds.
Thank you, Mayor. A resolution to authorize and direct the Director of Finance to certify certain delinquent charges for cutting noxious weeds to the county auditor for collection. Each year, the city incurs costs for mowing overgrown yards when owners do not take care of their property. The city bills property owners for those costs, and most of them pay. For those who do not pay, this is our annual resolution to certify the cost to the county auditor so they can be added to the tax bill for each property. I'd also like to say that fortunately we only have 5 properties, approximately $1,100 that needs to be billed, so that's good news. And I move the council adopt this resolution.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
And any other comments for Mr. Stevens? Hearing none, Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Duncan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Byington?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Mrs. Hilton?
Yes.
Mr. Epley?
That concludes our legislation. We have a very interesting staff report from our Public Safety Department. And Chief Hill, welcome.
It's been about 6 months since I stood before you. I just want to cover just some of the things that have been going on with the Safety Department over, I guess, the spring and the summer. I'm going to talk about capital improvements, some Irving Avenue enforcement. We've had a couple significant cases of note that's not typical to our criminal activity that we see that I want to highlight. Some personnel changes, our radar sign that continues to be a great tool for us, the crime mapping project, and then the Citizens Police Academy that we're starting. With that being said, we have completed our 2018 capital improvement for equipment, starting with our 2 cruisers that we replaced. We replaced the supervisor's vehicle and a patrol vehicle. This patrol vehicle was replaced with the 2000. They were both SUVs. They seem to be just the most, I guess, I won't say economical vehicle for what we do. As far as the police and fire side, the fact that we're carrying our fire gear with us when we're out on patrol, the sedans that are offered, kind of smaller in space, and these are proving to be a great vehicle for us. The vehicles that were replaced was a 2010 with approximately 110,000 miles on it, and a 2008 that was approaching 100,000 miles as well. Also budgeted in our capital improvement this year was a Life Pack 15 that replaced the Life Pack 12 that the city purchased in 2006. The Life Pack is really the standard for emergency care for ALS, advanced life support teams who are out in the field who want the most clinically innovative, operationally effective device that's available today. This is truly the device that if you're suffering from a cardiac-related incident that you want to have on the scene. Although they're expensive, they save lives every day. I'm happy to report this is the 3rd and final upgrade for us. So now both of our ambulances and our primary fire engine are all ALS capable, and we have the latest technology on them. Our final capital improvement this year was a result of a supplemental appropriation through council. We were able to replace our detective vehicle through seized drug funds at no cost to taxpayers' dollars as a result of the 806 Acorn case that we've talked a lot about. That replaced the 2007 vehicle that had about 110,000 miles on it. I've mentioned some of the years of service of the equipment that is replaced. The significance and the importance to me on that is I think we continue to be great stewards of the taxpayer's dollar, and we're getting the maximum life we can out of any piece of equipment we purchase. We're not replacing equipment after 3 or 5 years. We're truly taking care of it, and I think that shows when we're replacing it. You know, when you're replacing stuff that has 10, 12 years of service life. So I'm very happy for that. Irving Avenue enforcement. Although I'm going to talk about the spring semester, it's kind of timely because here in the next couple of weeks, Irving Avenue we'll start to see a lot more traffic as a result of UD returning to school. Each year, the Safety Department emphasizes enforcement of parking violations along Irving Avenue. We recognize that many of our residents live on the south side of Irving Avenue, and that strip of intersection or of roadway right there directly impacts their ability to park and come to and from their house. That is the reason we've entered into a memorandum of understanding or a mutual aid agreement with the city of Dayton that allows us to enforce traffic violations along Irving. One of them being the time-restricted parking enforcement. During January and May of 2018, basically the second semester, the Safety Department issued 242 parking violations or citations along Irving Avenue. I mentioned the number only to show our consistent presence that we have out there. You don't accumulate a number of 242 over a 5-month period if we're never there. I say that for our residents who are watching at home that live in the north end. We understand this is a big concern for you, especially with that being a transient population that's coming in and out daily for classes. And although you may not see us, we're down there almost every single day. Historically, the last month of the year, the school year, is when we receive the most citizen-generated complaints. Students are coming in for exams. They think they're going to be for a short period of time. And that is when we start to get our complaints. We really focused this year during the month of April, where we issued 113 parking citations over that period of time. But the most important thing is this is the first time that I can remember since being in a command staff position going back to 2011 that we received 0 complaints from citizens along Irving Avenue. So the effort to the men and women of the safety department that are out there consistently daily enforcing that, I think the results we're making some headway down there. With that being said, the new school year is upon us, and we will again monitor this area for violations diligently, especially over the first 30 or 45 days to hopefully eliminate any problems as the school year goes forward. The cases of note that I've mentioned, robberies are very rare to our community. Significant Part 1 crimes is not something that we see very often, and we had a very unfortunate robbery that occurred back in March of 18 with a resident who resides in the 300 block of Skank. She was approached by a female when she was standing in her driveway who asked her for directions. Subsequently, as they engaged in conversation, she was pepper sprayed by the suspect, who ultimately stole her purse, jumped in a vehicle, and fled the scene. The 3 individuals that are pictured in here were the 3 individuals that were responsible for this crime, and they went on a mini crime spree, and it wasn't just an Oakwood resident that was the victim. There were a couple other jurisdictions where like and similar robberies had occurred within a very short period of time, hours. The victim's credit cards, our victim's credit cards, were used at an area Kroger shortly thereafter. And within 8 hours of the incident, our investigative section, Detective Jeff Yount, from the time he got the call on this at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, worked on it, and he was able to identify and apprehend the 3 individuals involved, and they were arrested about 2 o'clock in the morning. So although we had a significant crime for any city, particular ours, within 8 hours, the people responsible were in custody, and now court action is pending against them. So, although it was a significant incident, I'm happy to report we were able to get a quick resolution. One that got a little bit more media attention was the bank robbery that occurred at LCNB Bank on May 30th, where a female suspect entered the bank, presented a note indicating there was a robbery, fled after getting about $2,500. Where this incident caught media attention was the getaway driver involved in this incident a couple hours later committed a homicide in the city of Dayton. This case was quickly linked with our bank robbery. Captain Jones and Detective Yount got involved almost right away, spent a significant amount of time down at the crime scene, the homicide crime scene in Dayton, working with Dayton investigators in other areas, jurisdictions as well. We were able to get some information that led them to Evendale, and by 3 o'clock in the morning, both suspects responsible for this crime and several others was also arrested. Both of these individuals are currently in the Montgomery County Jail with court action pending against them. So again, although we're seeing a couple incidents, it's very rare for our city. They don't happen all the time. I'm happy to report that we were able to get quick resolutions in both cases. Personnel changes. Since we last spoke, we've had 2 retirements. Officer Mike Russell left us on April 15th. He retired with over 25 years of public service, 18 of which was with the city of Oakwood. And on May 24th, unfortunately, we lost George Williams to a service disability retirement. George had battled a series of leg injuries over a period of time, including a knee replacement in which he came back from. and ultimately he had to pursue a service disability retirement. At the time of George's retirement, he had over 21 years of public service and 7 years with the city of Oakwood. We wish them both well in their retirement as they move on with the next chapter of their lives. With those 2 retirements, we have 2 new additions that we swore in not too long ago, a couple of months at the June council meeting. Justin Sloan, who came to us from the Fairborn Fire Department. He has almost 10 years of fire paramedic experience. He recently completed the academy, and he's currently in his FTO field training program, and he will be slated to be on his own in September. If you recall, one thing about Justin was the 3rd person in the history of the police academy to graduate with the 3 gold medal awards, physical fitness, top shot, and academics. Well, it became no surprise after he took his state police certification exam, I got another call from the academy commander, and he's the first person in the history that he is aware of through Sinclair that scored 100% on the legal section of the state exam. I think that just goes to attest to the caliber of individual he is, and it's no surprise then why he finished #1 academically in the academy. Jesse Schaefer, he's now on the street as a full functioning public safety officer. Although he was hired on May 14th from the Ohio State Highway Patrol, he was certified as a police officer, firefighter, and EMT at the time of his arrival, and he is quickly showing to be a great addition to our department. The radar sign. Mr. Klops approved this purchase for us, I'm going to say October of last year, and in the 10 months that we've had this has been an invaluable tool for us. It's been an effective tool. It ultimately allows us to best allocate our resources. You'll see it quite frequently throughout the city. I know in the December council meeting, we had a lot of public comments regarding speedings and some concerns in specific areas. One of the areas that we really focused on is Kramer, coming to and from Dayton Country Club. We have frequent communication with a resident in that area for monitoring ongoing traffic to make sure there's no concerns. But I did want to bring a report. Back in December, we talked about that we would monitor that time period, but then once the summer season started and golfing came in, that we would conduct another traffic analysis. With that being said, I have a graph here that shows the daily average speed from a 4-day weekend period. The one in December was the first week in December, and the significance to the one in May, that was Memorial Day weekend. So that was kickoff weekend for the country club, golf season, pool opening. And what we saw on our daily average speeds, although they went up on Friday and Monday by 2 miles per hour, they were still 4 miles per hour below the posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour. So although we had a slight increase, it was nominal, and it was no cause for concern from an enforcement standpoint for us. That leads us into the next slide, which is the 85th percentile, which means 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below the indicated speeds. And in December, we had the highest 85th percentile speed at 29 miles an hour, and over Memorial Day weekend, we did not exceed that. It was still 29 miles an hour and below. So from a law enforcement perspective on the enforcement side, very comfortable with seeing numbers like this with regards to speed and the ability for traffic enforcement. But we continue to monitor this area almost daily. Crime mapping follow-up. Earlier in 2018, the 8 members of Tactical Crime Suppression Unit Miami Township entered into an agreement with LexisNexis for crime mapping, what they call the Accurate Virtual Crime Center, which is a crime mapping software. The logistical phase, the contract phase is now done. All 9 communities have had their contracts approved, and the logistical phase of this project is now in effect. Each agency is working individually with LexisNexis, so the crime mapping software can begin receiving data from independent CAD systems from the respective departments. It's It's estimated that the implementation of this is about 180 days, or 120 days, excuse me. So when I see you, or when I come back before you, maybe February, March of next year, I'm hoping to report that this project is complete and it's up and running. The last thing I want to talk about is I'm very excited to announce that in September, the Oakwood Public Safety Department will be hosting the first ever Oakwood Citizens Police Academy. Citizens Police Academies are a unique opportunity for citizens to better understand the job of the public safety officer, but it also serves as a way for us to hear the needs and expectations of the community. It allows us to interact with citizens in a little different way, and we get their feedback. The Citizens Police Academy will run for 10 weeks. It starts on September 12th and it'll run through November 14th. It's on Wednesday nights. The times will be from 6:30 to 8:45, so it's basically 2 one-hour blocks with a 15-minute break in between. Some of the things that we'll cover during the course of the academy is safety department introduction and orientation, and also a historical overview of the agency, our patrol operations, our traffic enforcement, use of force, active shooter training, evidence collection and processing. And because we're unique in what we do with the public safety department, we're able to add a fire prevention and education component into our academy as well. The Citizens Police Academy is free of charge, and it is open to any Oakwood resident or individual working within the city of Oakwood who's 21 years of age or older. Applications for the academy are currently being processed, and we are very excited to offer this program to the citizens. And with that, take any questions.
Questions for Chief Hill? All right. Please, on behalf of, I think I speak for all of council, please give Detective Yount and Captain Jones, the fact that we are very excited that they were able to clear those 2 cases in a record amount of time. We appreciate their efforts on behalf of everybody, on behalf of the city. All right. On the Citizens Police Academy, do you have, is there a maximum number for the first class?
Yeah, 15.
15?
15 is the maximum number, and we currently stand at, I believe, 10.
All right.
So there are a few openings. I believe there's going to be another article in this week's Oakwood Register.
All right.
We're going to try to fill the last openings, and August 10th is when we would like to start processing and notifying.
Yeah, so if you're interested in this program, which I think is very worthwhile, they need
Now's the time.
Now's the time. Get your.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I believe it is now time for our city manager's report. Mr. Klops.
Thank you, Your Honor. We talk here often about the quick response time of our public safety department, and the 2 cases that the chief mentioned here kind of highlight that. But I want to tell you one quick story about another little incident that occurred a few weeks ago, and I was involved in it just by happenstance. And basically what happened is I went home one work day in the early afternoon to grab a bite to eat down there on the 200 block of Volusia, and I pulled around the corner from Glendora and parked my car, and there were a couple contractors working for AT&T on the fiber optic upgrade that they're doing down there. And I stepped out of my car, and I'd not met these folks. They didn't know who I was. I was just an Oakwood resident, pulling up in front of his house. And one of the fellows comes up to me and says, "Do you know your neighbor across the street here? I just saw somebody in the alley behind their house in their car." And this is the contractor talking to me, and he says he adds that I confronted the guy, and he took off running towards Oakwood Avenue, to the west. And this contractor said I chased him, and I chased him about to Oakwood Avenue, and then I broke off, and he was still kind of breathing heavy. So this had just happened before I pulled up there. So I said, "Hang on 1 second," and I dialed 296-5133, which is the direct line to the chief, and he picks up, and I tell him what just happened, and in less than 2 minutes, the first cruiser comes down the street, and it's a UD officer. And this is an example of the coordination and the daily contact and monitoring that takes place between our two departments. And 15 seconds behind, and I, of course, told that UD cop what had happened. And then 15 seconds behind him comes our first cruiser. And then 10 seconds behind him, our second cruiser. And 15 minutes later, we found the guy. And he was up around 333 Oakwood Avenue, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we had, 4 or 5, a couple more joined them, officers on the street, and we had a description of the person because this contractor, wow, made note of what the person looked like, and he was arrested and charged, and probably will, sadly, it's another drug addiction sort of case, and the person's probably back out on the street. But I think he'll probably think twice about coming back to Oakwood to try to break into cars. But just another amazing story about, what happens when you're so quick in responding to these sorts of things. And I guess the second reason I bring this up is because, unfortunately, car thefts from vehicles or car break-ins are a common issue or thing that we deal with here in Oakwood. And I can tell the community and you that I've not been diligent about locking my car doors historically. Now, I was robbed probably 3 years ago, and since then I routinely lock my car doors, and we just continuously remind our citizens to, even though we feel safe here in Oakwood, to lock the car doors. That's the most important thing to do. So anyway, I wanted to tell that quick story. A few other quick updates here. We're, believe it or not, we have about 1 month left of our pool season at Gardner Pool, and remarkably, everything has gone very smoothly, given all the construction activity there, particularly with the tennis court project. And so we appreciate all of our patrons' understanding and dealing with the dust and noise and all that. But if you look right from the tennis court over the fence to the pool, it's the happiest place, like it typically is every summer. So all's going well there. I want to thank the John R. Jurgensen Company for doing an excellent job on our asphalt repaving program. They completed the project in 1 week, from a Monday to a Friday, including grinding off the old pavement and resurfacing, sealing all the edges. I mean, the entire project in one calendar week, and that, to my recollection, has only been accomplished one other time. Now, of course, we can thank the weather, the good weather, for that as well, but they did a fine job, and I know all the folks that live on those streets that were repaved appreciate the new roadways. At our last meeting, I mentioned all the other construction that's going on here with the AT&T fiber work, with Vectron and their gas line projects, and our sidewalk curb and apron work, and all that is still underway and will continue for the next 1 to 2 months anyway. So there's still a lot of construction going on in Oakwood, and I would just encourage all of our citizens to keep an eye out for construction equipment. In cooperation with the Oakwood schools, we completed a project to update the suggested school route maps. And what these are there are 2 maps created for each of our 2 elementary schools, Harmon School and Smith Elementary. And it's basically provides a guide for our school children and, more importantly, their parents, in terms of what routes we as the schools and the city public safety department recommend as the best to travel on foot to and from the schools. So that project was recently completed, and just today Lori, who's our webmaster, as you know, posted those to the city website. They'll be on the school website as well, and the schools will be distributing those to all the kids at both of those schools. So it's a nice guide, and of course it takes into account the traffic control devices we have, the signals, where we have the adult crossing guards, and also very importantly, the idea that we want to congregate as many students along common pathways as possible, under the theory that there's strength in numbers, and the more that our citizens recognize what the primary school routes are, the better or more safe environment we can create. So that was an important project we completed. It's talking of school, as you know, it starts a week from Tuesday, and so we're working hard to wrap up the construction activity around the schools, and there's a little bit of concrete work being done this week on Telford, but that'll be done by next week. And just today we started our roadway restriping work, and that'll all be done around the schools before next Tuesday. That's all I have.
Great. Any comments or questions for the city manager? And hearing none, it's time for council comments. Councilmember Epley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no comments tonight.
All right. Councilmember Hilton.
No comments this evening, Your Honor.
Councilmember Stevens.
Just one quick comment. I'd like to go on public record to thank Captain Hill and his staff for the wonderful work they do. We hear great stories all the time. I hear from a lot of citizens about how
We
noticeable.
promoted him to chief. You said
I did
captain.
say captain. I apologize. I've known him longer as a captain. I apologize. Chief Alan Hill. I apologize. Sorry, Alan. I prefer to call him Alan. I apologize. So just, I get comments all the time about, how great our employees are in the public safety department. And, I especially love to get comments from citizens outside of Oakwood who comment about our patrolling of our streets. And, I've heard all the jokes about we drive around Oakwood, and I say to them, I'm glad you do. It's fine. and I joke about it, but obviously I welcome people to drive through Oakwood. But at the same time, it just means our guys are present. And that's what I do. I mean, with my job, I'm out in the, looking at properties all the time within our city, and I see our vehicles all the time. I mean, they're out there, they're visual, and that's what I like. Is that there's a presence and they're seen all throughout, not just in a specific area, but all throughout our community. So thank you again, Chief, and we really appreciate what your staff does.
All right, Vice Mayor Byington.
Only comment I have is, as was mentioned, school starts next week, and as such, we have our annual ice cream social is this Sunday. Time to start like 3:30, I believe it is. So if you, I'm sure it will be hot. So please come out and grab some ice cream. Council members as well as the Oakwood School Board will be serving ice cream. So, and this year, after many years of using the standard ice cream scoop and having difficulty going through the extremely rock hard ice cream, I bought a heated ice cream scoop. So I am ready for the ice cream social.
For all of your fellow council
just myself,
members?
just to see if it works. So I'm looking forward to Sunday's ice cream social.
Well, I was the head dip at Baskin-Robbins for 5 years and paid for 100% of my college, making $2 an hour, and so I know how to scoop out of those 3-gallon tubs. So I can give you some pointers. Okay.
You're still the head dip.
There you go. I would like to recognize Oakwood resident Alex Heckman, who was just promoted vice president for museum operations for Dayton History. Alex is an Oakwood resident, and he's been with Dayton History, I believe, for about 18 years. He's a recognized authority on the works of the Wright brothers and has appeared on nationwide broadcasts such as the History Channel, C-SPAN, American Public Media, and the BBC. He's conducted tours for thousands of people, including actors Tom Hanks and Martin Sheen, astronauts Neil Armstrong and John Glenn, former Speaker of the House of Representatives Newt Gingrich, and Pulitzer Prize winner David McCullough. So congratulations, Alex, and he is also a volunteer for one of our many citizen committees. This Friday, I'm be attending the ribbon cutting for the newly renovated Wright Library. They received a large grant from the Eichelberger Family Foundation, and we're having that in the afternoon, I believe. And once again, I know it was talked about a little bit earlier here about how that building's on the National Institute of Historical Places, and I don't think I said that right, but they are.
Historical Register.
Historical Register, that's correct. And then On Saturday, August 11, Giving Strings is having their event at the 200 block of Ridgewood, and this will be the 19th year that Giving Strings is just a volunteer effort where a bunch of citizens get together and play their musical instruments in a family-friendly environment. It started with the Judd family way back when, and now we have a group of triplets: Eric Powers, Regina Powers, and Greg Powers with their cellos and violas. So they raise money for a kids' charity, and this year they've picked Warm Hugs as their charity. It's an organization that sends blankets to Hispanic children in the Dayton area and in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas where there is a need. And so we're excited that they've done that, and they have raised over $55,000 for local children's charity over the history of this program. So I would encourage you to wander down to the 200 block of Ridgeway on Saturday, and then you can get your ice cream on Sunday the 12th, and everything will be good in Oakwood. So with that, that concludes our meeting, and our next regular session is going to be on Monday, September 17th, 2018. Meeting's adjourned.